Hello, I am William Jamar Wright,
And I'm Hattie.
and this is our podcast, What Are We Doing? Hope everyone out there is doing well. It's been a little bit of a break, but we're back and ready for action.
That's right.
On this episode, most recently, Coach K has coached his final game at Duke. They lost in the Final Four.
There's a reason why it's been a while before we're able to talk about this aloud.
So Coach K lost in the Final Four, but the team had a great season. They won the ACC championship. They made it to the ACC championship game. They won the regular season, and then they made it to the ACC championship game tournament, and then they made it to the Final Four.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a really good
really
season.
Successful season by anyone's standards, even Duke's standards.
And it's definitely, we kind of wanted to use this episode to kind of say farewell to Coach K and kind of just talk about some memories that we have of him or the team, because he kind of embodies the team, I would say.
Yeah, he's the one constant, right?
Yeah.
Players graduate, players go to the NBA.
Yeah, and it's definitely interesting to think about
he's certainly the Duke brand when it comes to basketball.
Yes. And I would say it's even farther than if there was a list of things that stand for Duke, Coach K would be up there. If you think of global students, we have a global or national and global community. I would say that Duke basketball and Coach K are kind of in terms of the branding and what do you know about Duke, they are definitely up there.
Yes, and I think that having this great basketball program is all well and good, but the university certainly capitalizes it in terms of it's a marketing thing.
Yes,
right.
It is
look,
definitely
we're
a
elite
marketing
in basketball, and that just fits with our overall profile. We're elite in everything. We're an elite institution, and
so
look how classy we are. Yeah. Look how great we are.
And I wonder
because I feel
if you
Coach
take the
K
percentage
or Coach Cut fit into that very much as well too, because he has an elite background coaching really high profile athletes, and he's a really great, really classy guy, holds himself to high standard. You know what I mean? It made sense to me when he was hired.
Yeah.
That it just fit with kind of how Coach K also conducts himself.
Yes.
And, so anyway, we're kind of getting on a tangent. But my point is, I definitely 100% agree that Coach K very much embodies the spirit of the Duke brand.
Yes. And so it's going to be actually, we can talk about this at the end, but I kind of remember, I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but, my first, thought.
Is this the elevator incident?
No, this is the time I was in high school, and so I was a sophomore. I was a sophomore in high school, and, I had a really good game. Basketball. And my coach was like, hey, if you shoot like that on a consistent basis, you can go to any school you want to go to in the country. And I was like, what? He's like, so what school would you want to go to? I was like, oh, without a doubt, I want to go to Duke and I want to play for Coach K. And I literally that is my most distinct memory of if I could have any choice in the country of where I wanted to go to and the sport that I wanted to play in, it would definitely be to go to Duke and play for Coach K. And I it's funny because I watched this show called Game Theory with Bomani Jones on HBO, and he talks about kind of Coach K's branding and coming up and how he kind of made a name for himself. It's he took these he took these majority white teams and they beat these majority black teams, and so all the African American community are rooting for UNLV. They're rooting for North Carolina, because they have all these notoriety. They have these
great players
great
at those
African American players that the black African American community is rooting for, and then Coach K comes along and he is just knocking them off because his team's really good.
Yeah, I remember when you were watching that episode, I didn't watch it myself, but I would hear little snips and pieces, and I feel like Bomani said something to the effect of like, yeah, it was really annoying because it's like the rich white kids that you would expect to be bad, right? Like, or just like, you just want to beat them because they're so annoying, and then they're really freaking good.
Yeah.
It's like, gosh darn it, like.
Yeah.
So what's the you're making this observation. I'm curious what.
Well, I'm making this observation because like when Coach K is kind of like, as Coach K is kind of in his rise to fame and he's doing all of this, like beating these like majority black teams and like teams that the African community are rooting for, like I'm like still kind of in my developmental like stage in life, and like I don't have as much attachment to those teams as probably like some of my uncles or cousins did, and it kind of like my attachment kind of comes a little bit later with like Shane Battier, Jay
I was
Williams,
gonna say, I feel like sure there's white dudes on the team these days, and maybe we're not the most predominantly African American team, but and maybe this is my privilege speaking, and I can't recognize actual diversity, but I feel like in general the teams, like no longer is it an all-white team.
Oh no, it's definitely, and even back then it wasn't an all-white team. It was just like a majority white team, and I would say now like, yeah, we're not like a majority. Depending on the team, it might
still be majority by like half, or like if the team is 18
which
players,
is not
it
like
might be like 10-8.
Yeah, which is not the norm.
Majority,
yeah, I would say it's not the norm in college basketball.
Yeah.
But anyway, like that's just kind of another tangent that we kind of.
So does that mean that you feel like there's a lot of people, like, are you surprised that you're a Duke fan given this history, or? No,
it was just like, you know, kind of like somebody brings something up and you're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Mm-hmm. It's just that, like, oh, like he did. Like the Duke basketball teams, like they beat the Fab Five. Like they beat like the UNLV teams. Like they beat Georgetown. Like there's all these in North Carolina. Like there's all these different like teams that like
are
notoriously good basketball programs. That like Duke would come along and like there'd be a little scrappy underdog that would like take them out, or like just from like perception, that would take them out. And so like it's just interesting to like a perspective I hadn't really like considered and thought about. But yeah, I definitely like when I was in high school, I definitely like this was my like dream school. And then it turns out I ended up
close. So far. Like you got to do,
I ended up
but the wrong sport. Like
turns out I ended up going and playing football there, and like so many people were like, "Yo, you should try to walk on to like the basketball team." I'm like, guys, like first of all, you know how hard it is to just play football, like at a Division I school, let alone another sport. Like my time would have been like I don't know how I would have survived. If I would have tried to like be a walk-on top of like
class,
all the other things I had to do for football. So yeah, that was kind of my first like initial. I want to go to Duke and I want to play for Coach K. And then you kind of like, I'm a student at Duke, and like there are freshmen who are basketball players, and I'm like interacting with them, and like we like become friends, but like it's kind of like, oh, we're all athletes, like we're all kind of have like similar like things that we're dealing with, and things like that, so we like kind of bond over these things. And I think now like it's a little bit more integrated than what it used to be.
When you say it's a little more integrated,
or like the student athletes,
and when
like
you say
from
integrated, do you so you don't mean
like,
from a racial perspective?
No, not from a racial. I'm talking about from like a
like there's more interaction. Sports.
Yeah,
football players have more friends on the baseball and basketball team.
Yeah,
and that it's not just I only know football players.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more like there's a lot more interaction between the different sports, like and like that summertime when now majority of the fall sport student athletes, they have to be on campus during the summertime, and so they haven't figured out their housing and they can't live on East Campus, so like all of the fall sport student athletes that are living on West Campus, and they're all in kind of the same dorm.
And nobody else is there.
Yeah, and so you kind of get that like connecting and bonding, and so it's just more integrated in those types of settings than when I was there. Like the first other student athlete I saw like was when we checked in for camp. There was nobody else there. No. It was just football.
And even if there was, you wouldn't have time to interact with them. Yeah.
And so like I'm there at Duke, and Coach K is like so close, but he's just like so far away. And that like they are very busy. I was busy, like, and so as an undergrad, I think maybe like I can't recall a time when I was in undergrad that I actually like saw Coach K or like talked to him, or like there was never a time.
Yeah, when would you?
Yeah, and so I get to like I graduate, leave a couple of years, and I come back, and like I become friends with some of the like staff members that are in the basketball staff, and it becomes more of like I'm more like the sixth
man.
Yeah, or not the sixth man, but like like you're 6 people away, like you're
6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, 6 degrees of separation.
It's more like 3 or 2. I feel like.
Yeah, it was definitely like, yeah. But like I become like these degrees of separation from like people that like know Coach K like very personally, and like have relationships with him, and it kind of like I still wouldn't say like I definitely don't know him, but like I feel more connected to him than when I was like in undergrad. Like one of the strength and conditioning staff members, he lives like right across the street from him, and like I didn't find this out until like years after I graduated from Duke, and I'm hanging out at this house, and he's like, yeah, Coach K lives right across the street. I was like, oh, really?
I read to him when I picked my newspaper.
Wow. Wow, like I did not know this. Like, yeah, he's like, we're good friends. So it's just like all these different connections of like his daughters and like their like families, just like all these different connections.
Kickball, yeah, and softball with
and
them.
So like you have all these different connections, and like it's a different type of connection than even that I felt as an undergrad student.
So how are you feeling now that this era is coming to a close?
I'm like, Duke basketball is not the same. For me, it's not the same. It'll be interesting to see like how things.
But your fandom is not gonna like. You're still gonna be a big fan. Or are you like, I don't care as much now?
I definitely would say that like my fandom was tied to Coach K. Like I'm gonna root for him because they're my alma mater, and I want my alma mater to do well. But like I definitely like had a rooting interest in like watching Coach K, like his mannerisms, like how he talked about leadership, and like I literally would watch every single post-game press conference. They put it on Facebook, and it's like I was connected. I was emotionally connected. Yeah, emotionally invested. But I don't know, like I'll have to wait and see, because I don't know if I'll be that like emotionally invested.
Because that's something, and that is a great point. Like maybe you're not going to be as emotionally invested, because that's something I've been wondering a lot. I feel very strongly there are a lot of diehard Duke fans, and one thing I've noticed about a lot of them is that it's this similar reverence, adoration of Coach K, and it's less about the program's performance. Sure, there's always like the people that want to win or whatever, but even in seasons where we only make it to the Elite Eight, or we, don't go quite as far, it's like everybody's still really proud to be a Duke fan, and they talk about Coach K. Like he's talked about just as much, if not more, than any of the players.
Yes.
And it's not in a way like some of these other coaches are like, oh, he's just, talking his mouth, or like won't give the handshake, and now we're punching people. It's like it's positive things that are being said, or things about his coaching style, as opposed to some like crass behavior he's displayed. Because he doesn't really display that much. I mean, he gets fired up. He has his moments and gets fired up, but not towards other people. It could just be to his own team when he's trying to motivate them or coach them up. Anyhow, I wonder if that big fan base, like, I don't want to like speak this into existence, but like, what if the next few seasons we do really poorly and it's like not the same level of performance? I can see a lot of people kind of hopping off the bandwagon because they're like, oh, it's no longer Coach K's Duke, like it's a whole different program, I'm not connected, I'm not invested. But then on the flip side, I'm like, but there's so many people that are such diehard Duke fans, I have a hard time feeling like they're going to totally abandon ship. But at the same time, I can see them being like, you know, our fearless leader is now
not
there, so it's totally different.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting, like, to see that. I would say that, like, those diehard fans that are still there now, like, if it doesn't go well, like, there's gonna be some like loud chatter for like calling for some changes.
Yes.
Which I don't like, especially being a former like college coach. Like, I don't necessarily agree with, but I do hope that they like give Coach Shire, John, they give him the like time to kind of grow, to grow into his own, like, grow the program into his like image.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely not going to be the same.
But I do think, and I mean, I have very minimal knowledge of other candidates or whatever, but I do think Coach Shire is a great choice. 2 reasons off the bat. One, he was part of a national championship winning team that I was there to watch and cheer on to victory. But so he has the perspective of being coached by Coach K himself, right? It's not an outside coach from another institution. So I feel like I think it's important for him to develop his own style and not just try to continue this Coach K legacy when Coach K is gone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to continue some aspects of it, right? And, you know, we talked about that branding and whatever, and I think it is good for him to develop his own stuff, own style, but at the same time, have it be like sprouting from the tree as opposed to like something totally different.
Tree.
Bulldoze it down, and you know. So I think that's important, and I think what was I gonna say? Oh, I guess I kind of had those 2 things conflated into one. Like I meant to say he was in the national championship. He was part of a really talented team all 4 years. I feel like there are many other players. He himself was a pretty talented player, but his teammates as well. Tons of them are in the NBA right now. All 4 years that he was playing, and so I think he understands what it's like to work with elite athletes that go on to the NBA and do well in the NBA, as opposed to, and I hate to say just a really good college basketball player, because that's already in like the tippy top, but when there's one more tippy top above that, you know, like, so I guess what I'm trying to say is I think he has a good understanding of what these really, really elite athletes are trying to accomplish, what their mental kind of like preference isn't right the word, but what's important to them.
Yeah, their thought process coming through Duke.
What motivates them, all that stuff. He also has won a national championship as a player, so he understands kind of this is how you get there, and also the mentality of I was on a national championship winning team all 4 years, but only won once, right? Like, so he understands that we can be great, and things are not always going to shake out exactly how we want them to. You know, he's been on the coaching staff with Coach K for quite a while, just as an assistant coach. And then on top of that, because he's had all that experience, but he's also been coached directly by Coach K himself, I think that will help him to continue some of the things that would be beneficial to the program to continue.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good choice, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice as well, and it'll be great to see like Duke basketball, the brotherhood continue on, and
and I'm also curious. I feel I don't know how John Shire's living his life right now, because I feel like the pressure is extreme. Because if things go poorly, they're like, oh, no one can ever replace Coach K, and blah blah blah. But if things go well, I am also feeling like there's going to be a bunch of people being like, well, when you have the foundation that Coach K laid, like, it doesn't matter what you do. You could be a bump on a log and it's still going to be great. And it's like
a lose-lose situation.
Yes. Like, this poor guy. So anyway, I wish him all the best.
Yeah, and I think too, like.
But I do think it helps that he's, you know, the first couple of years are still Coach K recruiting classes, so he's still getting tons of fantastic players.
This year's recruiting class is all his. So next year, like, there will be some players that are still around from like when Coach K recruited, and but like this incoming class, the majority of them are going to be playing, and they knew going in like
that Coach K wasn't.
Yeah, that Coach K wasn't going to be
so
there.
So do you think that do you think that the Duke brand itself was enough to still attract some of the top tier recruits that Coach K would have attracted? Or do you think the fact Coach K leaving, now John Shire has to pull from a different tier of athletes?
I think this year is definitely like the top tier. We've been able to that top tier. And so next year's team like is going to have a bunch of NBA players on it. And I think like one of the hardest things to do in like college basketball, especially like now in this era of like you can be 1 year on campus and go to the NBA, it's just like, can you consistently recruit at this like high level? Coach K was able to like year in and year out like recruit at like a high level, and I think it will be interesting to see because college basketball is kind of going through this change with coaches, and like different people are getting opportunities.
Really?
Like Villanova's coach just recently retired. Like you got Roy Williams that retired at UNC. Like John Calipari, he's still going at Kentucky, but like you got like it's kind of a change of the guard in terms of like the coaching.
And not just at Duke.
It's not just at Duke. And so like you seeing Arkansas, like they're recruiting like very well, and so they're gonna be a program that is like he's gonna
on the rise.
Yeah, they're gonna be a program that's on the rise and the program that keeps developing. And so like you're gonna see these different programs across the country that kind of start to ascend. And so does Duke basketball stay where they're at, or as a result of these other programs ascending and choosing to, or these other programs ascending, can Duke maintain, or will it slip down a little bit? Because with the way everything is going now in the world in terms of like branding and marketing and stuff like that, like you don't necessarily have to go to like Duke to be like
a top NBA recruit,
or to be a top NBA recruit, or to be on TV all the time.
Correct.
And I think part of why Duke was on TV all the time was because we had Coach K. And so like, is ESPN gonna be putting us on like TV as much as we were like the past 5 years? Which I definitely which I think is a huge draw for like.
I think at least the next 2 years they will, because they'll be like, how's Duke gonna do? Right, like spotlights on them, and especially with the rivalry with UNC, I feel like that's always going to be a draw.
Oh well, the Duke UNC game is always going to be like a huge draw, but like the Duke UNC game isn't the one that like gets everybody's. That isn't like that rivalry. If it was only that rivalry that served as like the marketing, then UNC would be just as like
yes.
But it's the like. On a random, if you take a week of basketball games, college basketball games, Duke is going to be on TV like 2 to 3 times. Like, but UNC is probably on TV like once a week, and maybe like that other time is when they're playing Duke. So like that, like it'd be like the reason why Duke basketball, like I can watch all of these games with Duke basketball is because they're always on ESPN. But a big part of that was Coach K, and so like now that Coach K's gone, are like the higher ups at ESPN and these networks, are they going to choose to go highlight other programs and other coaches?
Right. Well, and that's why I'm saying, at least for the next few years, I think they will continue. At least the next year, because first of all, you can't just go from like highlighting this top-notch program to nothing.
But
right?
you can highlight other programs. You can highlight other like.
But
ACC
like,
programs or SEC programs.
The people are still kind of, if it worked in the past.
But
yes,
did it work in the past because of Coach K?
No, I know, but it's like, that's the time to test this hypothesis, right? if it worked in the
But
past,
I don't. They're not
hold
like
on,
scientists though. They're not trying to like.
But listen, they're into making money, and they know, okay, I can. There's 4 outcomes, right? It's that people would watch it and we do put it on TV, so we make money, or people would watch it, we don't put it on TV and we lose out on money, or people don't really want to watch it and we put it on TV and we maybe lose a little bit of money. People don't really want to watch it and we don't put it on TV and we like don't lose any money on it. And so I think the gamble for them is, do we think that we don't want to put it on TV and nobody's going to watch and care? Or do we think that there's enough interest from different changes and, you know, all these things going on that people are still going to want to watch?
Right.
And I think that they're going to do the cost-benefit analysis, and 3 of those options I feel like are, and okay, maybe the more I talk about it, the more I talk myself out of it. But I think that there's
so I would say that there's another question too of like, as opposed to putting Duke on like 3 times a week, do we only put Duke on like once a week? And do we highlight like an Arkansas program that is up and coming? Do we highlight North Carolina that went to the championship game and they have all of their players coming back?
Mm-hmm.
And so like these other programs that are ascending, do we like highlight them more than we've done in the past? Because
oh yeah, and maybe they drop it back to like Duke only goes 2 times a week or whatever. But I think that it's not like they're going to completely take Duke out of the rotation.
Oh no, that would be like, no, you would not. So I wasn't trying to suggest that like they would take Duke out of the rotation.
Got it. Okay.
I was suggesting that they will
minimize.
Yeah, they will minimize. Like Duke won't be on there 2 to 3 times a week. We'll be on there once a week.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and I think that's much more likely.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. But the Coach K era is gone. He's been at Duke for as long as we've both been alive, and now he's on to do something else.
Relax a little, we hope. He deserves it. He deserves it.
All right. Well,
that is what we are doing.
deuces.